We're on the Algonquin conquest of the Mediterranean part. What is this, 9 on them? So we slide on them. We didn't double back on them, double back on them, double back. You know what I'm saying? Every time we drop something, they got to drop two. You feel me? I do. And if they drop two, then we're going to drop five. You feel me? I'm going to stay on their necks so they respect. Shout out to the cab. Shout out to Doodoo. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Lily Orchard. All my real engines out there. You know what I'm saying? We're doing this for y'all. You know what I'm saying? Back against the wall. It's us against everybody. So this Olmec head was excavated in San Lorenzo, Mexico, when small part of the right forehead was noticed under burned over jungle. These enormous heads are appearance more African than Indian, courtesy of American Museum of Natural History. When departing from Toulon had become incomprehensible to them, and again, for all the tongues had already become different. Alas, alas, we have abandoned our speech. Why did we do this? Our language was one we departed from Toulon, one in the country where we were born. The lack of any usable bridge language with their conquerors was one more disadvantage to the Indian civilization in central Mexico. For if they had known from the beginning what the Spanish planned for them, the history of the New World might have been different. When the Spanish conquistadors came into contact with the Indians of Mexico for the first time, they generally addressed them in Latin and later sometimes in Greek. Since some of the Maya syllabaries sounded more like Greek than Latin, some unusual incidents occurred when the Spaniards of the Yucatan asked the leader of the Maya group in Latin what their land was called, and he replied to Yucatan. What did you say? And this word was duly set down in the name of the territory. And another occasion, a Spanish soldier was about to kill an Indian unexpectedly and said in Spanish, "Do not slay me, caballero. I am a Castilian, like yourself." He was telling them the truth, having been shipwrecked some time ago and now a slave of the Maya. When he rejoined his countrymen, he was a most useful interpreter with the Mayas, and through his knowledge, one of the Maya languages was the Aztec, and they became more familiar with the Indian language. The Spanish priests began to find what they considered Greek and Hebrew and Basque words mixed in with the native language, not only in Central America but even in Peru. These coincidences were variously interpreted as due to such possibilities that the Indians began the 10 most tribes of Israel or descendants of the Atlanteans, both of which belong to considerable additional reason for conquest and conversion by the Spanish conquerors. Several of the words noted at the early period strangely coincidental to the Walt Aztec word or word prefix for gods or gods, Teo shortened to Teo, and compound Theos and God in Greek, and often occurred in combination with Theokali, house of the god, or Kalia, a small dwelling in Greek. Theo is also used in many places, names such as famous period Teotihuacan, literally the place of those who had the gods. The curious double coincidence of the resemble of Teocalli and the Theocali, dwelling of God, in ancient Greek caused Alexander Van Humboldt, a earlier student of the Aztec, to exclaim, "This is pure Greek," in somewhat over enthusiastic statement. Albert understands under the circumstances. If y'all notice, they basically overlapped the Mayan and the Aztec in a weird way, because obviously he was enslaved by the Mayans, but they were doing business with the Aztecs. Basically, business went bad with the Aztecs later on. You feel me? After they did all this mixing for hundreds and hundreds of years, because obviously they were shipwrecked over there before he even came. So they went way a long time ago. It says the Amira language of the Indian highlands used the word Maluk for king, and reminiscent of the Hebrew Melech or the Arabic Malik, which is the word garua or drizzle, which is the same in Kahiki or Koya, the imperial language of the Incas and the Bas. A Mayan exorcism was found to resemble almost exactly a phrase used in ancient secret celebrations of Greek mysteries. The name Tlaloc, the Mexican rain or water god, would have been compared with the Greek word for sea, Talasa, not Tallahassee almost, not only for the sound of the name, but for the element which it rules. Even in the United States, we have what may be simply a linguistic chance of resemblance between the name of the famous river Potomac and the Greek name for river is Patmos. An example, the language of groups and language of affiliates, which are capable of jumping conclusion, which are certain chances resemble, unless of course they are often repeated. The English adverb interjunction so, for example, is used almost exactly in the same way in Japanese. The English word whole is represented by the same sound in Maya. In fact, the so was Japanese word for contact with the outside world. Linguistic chance to the fact that the Japanese now contains 2,000 or more adopted English words, sufficient to indicate the archaeologists of the future an important cultural contact, therefore, for purpose of identifying ancient contacts with the Americas. Citation should also be used as an exercise to avoid new word possibility adopted by a wholesale into Indian language from the language of the discoverers. So Atlas was the titan of the god who wore the sky aloft. He personified the quality of endurance of the outpost. Atlas was the leader of the Titans. The Titans war against Zeus. And after their defeat, he was condemned to carry the heavens upon his shoulder, according to the others, but instead or later appointed the guardian of the pillars, which held the earth's sky And Ascender Atlas was also the god who instructed mankind in the art of astronomy, and the great navigator, a tool which he used by sailors in navigation and farmers and measuring the seasons. So, says here you will find the location of the Hesperides on the map. Uh, to see how it currently looks like outside and below, there's some pictures of the area from online web camera. So the Hesperides can be found in 2 countries throughout the world. In some countries, the place can be found more than once. For example, America has the highest number of places called the Hesperides spread across 2 regions. The majority of the cities named Hesperides can be found above the equator. Northernmost place of the region that begins at Benghazi in Libya. The southernmost place in the region of Florida in America. Of course, it's always Florida. Florida and Louisiana are the same thing. Remember, they considered it all Florida up until the Louisiana Purchase. So, just one big old state for real. Bogota. All right, as we went over in the Algonquin conquest of the Mediterranean, we have a meeting. 2 queens in Egypt. I think it's Hepsetu, and I can't remember old girl's name, but we're gonna find her though. But I think it's Hepsetu in the land of Punt or land of Punta, or to dance the Punta. Anybody that knows about the Punta, to dance the Punta, and, from the islands to Mexico to our, what is it? People across the pond, or I call it across the lake, because you can float on the inner tube to these countries. Uh, it's you'll get it. Let's get into it because she had a meeting, but they say she came from across the water. And for her to come across the water, supposedly she was Egypt. One queen was Egyptian, and the other one was Ethiopian. But you remember, they were trying to make southern Egypt uh, Ethiopia rather than northern Egypt, southern Egypt. You'll get it. You know what I'm saying? Let's get into it. Let's read rather than talk. So I'd rather, you know what I'm saying, make them tell on themselves. But, as we did in the past couple videos, we talked about who the sea people were. Uh, Also, we know how all the technologies came. We fuck with Katanga and Bongo in America and the ancient Egyptians. We got into that. We know about the Moche. We know about the sailors and the Olmec navigation. So let's keep it moving. It says in late 2006, excavating man-made caves on the coast of the Red Sea found well-preserved cedar timber together with limestone blocks anchoring curved cedar steering oars, rigging ropes, and seagoing vessels dating back 3,800 years ago. Buried in today called the Wadi Gawassis, near what was the port of the Red Sea in the Pharaonic times. Right here, we're going to get back with the Algonquin conquest of the Mediterranean 11,500 years ago, way before, you know what I'm saying, what they talking about. So sometime after establishing the first Atlantean colonies in northwestern North Central Africa near the Mediterranean Sea, of course the Atlanteans obviously started colonizing in a close proximity of the present location of Egypt. And in fact, Egypt itself, we know from the story of Atlantis that Egypt was colonized by the first civilized people of Greece, yet the Carthaginians actually had the opportunity to initiate a colony in Egypt 1,000 years before the Egyptian Europeans did. Then we must remember that it would be very surprising if before the first Carthaginians and Egyptians and Europeans colonized Egypt, that an earlier group of Atlanteans likewise found Egypt to be desirable and laid out farms and villages throughout Egypt and did so along the Nile River and in parts of Egypt nowhere near the Nile River as well. Again, Atlantean colonies may have reached well into the interior parts of Africa. And remember what Katongo said. Katongo said that it spread down in the same way as whenever you study the story of what you would call Senegambia. The Senegambians always say they came straight out of. They said, yeah, they should have said they came out of Senegambia, which was in modern Saudi Arabia, something like that. We'll put the video in this video, so I ain't gotta do too much talking. But yeah, they said the interior of Africa. Boom. And laid out farms and the villages throughout Egypt did so as long as the Nile River in those parts. Egypt is nowhere near the Nile as well. Again, colonies may have reached well into the interior parts of Africa and may have existed in present location of Chad and Niger, and generally in the vicinity of what part of Africa Atlanteans landed. Explorers may have even for the interior of Africa made their way into what is now Ethiopia and Somalia. But the great distance, especially for tons, make it highly unlikely Atlanteans land explorers eventually reach Ethiopia and Somalia. Ethiopia and Somalia. But as far exploring Ethiopia and Somalia by the way of the Indian Ocean, that another story, it may have been northeastern Africa when the first wave of Atlanteans, also the Carthaginians, sent their first exploration parties into what is now present location of Israel, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia, which the Algonquins obviously settled. My bad, y'all having heartburn and shit in this motherfucker. And then they had to use the Red Sea to explore the immediate region surrounding the Red Sea, including Ethiopia and Somalia, and possibly as it means to travel their Pacific Ocean territories. If they did, as I believe, the start of the colonies out of the vast Pacific Ocean, all of North Africa and north of the equator may have been as well known by the Atlanteans as if so. It's likely the Atlanteans either frequented that part of Africa to live there, or to learn the resources of the land, or just to pay a friendly visit. After the first wave of Atlanteans had established all their colonies located throughout North Africa and even the interior of Africa, the Atlanteans obviously grew and multiplied. Then, with the coming of invading Carthaginians, the full greatness of the African Atlantean Empire was obviously reached. If that is all, the Northern Africa before the Carthaginian invasion was never united in one kingdom, with their colonies located in both Europe and Africa. The Carthaginians and Atlanteans had little to worry about conquering possible threats in their glorious empire, accepting the mighty Egyptian Europeans, of course, and way of life, which likely was something a bit similar to the way we live. It sounded like they had infighting going on. It sounded like they spread out, went two different ways, and you got too many heads, it causes infighting always. But the way, even if you got one head and then the leader dies, then the pyramid normally implodes on itself. We would frown upon, but little did we know we would be extremely wise to suggest otherwise. Prophecy, of course, after they had settled the location of our Earth, incredible changes would eventually occur, which would have horrific consequences for them much later on. Their concerns, those times, probably dealt in economic need, military needs, crime, education, for at least some of the Carthaginian citizens, and also the general health care of the Carthaginian people. Northern Africans, Atlanteans' popularity may have outnumbered the Atlantean population, both Europe and the Middle East, and it is likely that for the most part, the Carthaginian Atlanteans, the leaders, considered the colonies in North Africa, especially. Oh shit, my bad, lost my spot. The Carthaginian Empire is far important in military perspective, especially during the early years. The Carthaginian Empire is far more important militarily and economically compared to the rest of the Carthaginian Empire. If they were, and as I suspect, united at one time, The land of North Africa 11,500 years ago was probably a farmer's paradise and the entrepreneur's dream of making a fortune, obviously. But the same can't be said now. The same land today is nothing compared to what it was 11,500 years ago. That is because of extreme climate change, which occurred thousands of years ago. If we had a chance to actually know what North Africa looked like 11,500 years ago, there would not be that we would recognize. That would not be what we recognize now. Europe and elsewhere, second, there's strong resemblance between some of the sculptures and the mounds of those Mexico exist and resemble facts that those Palenque furnish the most striking likeness to those of the Mississippi Valley. There is perhaps no means of ascertaining what color that the prehistoric Americans were, certainly not the mound builders, but judging from the great variety of tint and shade prevailed among the wild tribes of North America alone, we must conclude that no argument in favor of the American can be reached based upon color. The anemones, sometimes called Indians, formerly occupied a region bordering on Lake Michigan, according to Green Bay. The whiteness of these Indians, which is compared to the white mulatto. So, all right, so light skinned niggas, that's basically what they said. Light skinned niggas early attached to attention of Jesuit missionaries. They hadn't seen any white niggas or mulatto niggas or mixed niggas since they got there. But you know, Eric the Red, who else was going there? We had several people traveling to northern Canada for mining situations. You know who brought them? Algonquins, who's up there in the north, Algonquins. Okay, let's keep it moving. Although every shade from the ash color, the enemies throughout the cinnamon red, copper, and bronze tints may have found among the tribes formerly occupying the territory east of the Mississippi, the remnants of some of which are now in Indian territory and the others in Northwest. See, so they moved the white Indians into an area where they could watch them because they like, we can handle these ones over here, but we need y'all to do this. Okay, until we reach the dark-skinned cause of Kansas, who are nearly black as the Negroes. The Indians in Mexico are known as the black people in Appalachian designated to the United States. It says, after renewing the question of unity of the American race from Marx, it will be easy to prove that the American races, instead of displaying uniformity of color in all climates, show nearly a variety of respect with the as a nation of all continents, as they are among the white races with florid complexion inhabiting temperate regions and tribes black of very dark hue is low intertropical countries. The, their statue figures and countenance are almost equally diversified. Of that fact, I shall collect sufficient evidence when I proceed to the ethnography of the American nation. We will check that book out, Wilson's Prehistoric Man. I'm gonna record. Is Hatshepsut the biblical queen of Sheba? I read with interest what Patrick Clark has written in an attempt to discredit the identification of Hatshepsut with Queen of Sheba. Most of what he has written is devoted to discredit, oh my God, Belinsky, whatever. Y'all see my boy V. Y'all know what I'm saying. I would agree with him that my boy V was stretching things and trying to identify the name Sheba was part of the name Hatshepsut. But he has a point in observing that the Hebrew text does not say Queen of Sheba, but Queen Sheba. If it is Queen Sheba, it is not apparent what is meant. If Sheba was a place, it is true that most scholars identify it with Yemen and Arabia, but according to Genesis 10-7, Sheba was a grandson of Cush, and the land of Cush was directly south of Egypt. All right. However,
Josephus and Jesus Christ were lost a lot closer in time to these events than we are. The former wrote, there was a woman, queen of Egypt and Ethiopia. When this queen heard of the virtue and prudence of Solomon, she had a great mind to see him. Accordingly, she came to Jerusalem with great splendor and rich fortune. Ethiopia is here translated from the word Cush to refer to Nubia directly. We know that's not right because we know my man's. Ivan Ben Sertima has proven that the word Ethiopia does not mean just one place. There's three Ethiopias. The furthest Ethiopia, we got the one right there in Saudi Arabia, and the one that is right across the water in Somalia and all that other shit. You know what I'm talking about, Ethiopia. Translated from the word Cush to refer to Nubia, directly south of Egypt, a nation that the Egyptians frequently invaded and ruled over. Jesus called her the Queen of the South. My mother was Queen of the South of the Masons, well, the Eastern Stars. Matthew 12:42, a term which applied to Egypt. I never met V himself, though I did spend time talking to his daughter, Shamalit. V was a brilliant scholar and is to be congratulated for being the first to ring the alarm bells on traditional chronology. Chron- chronology. My fault, y'all, but I do not agree with all he wrote. He frequently tried to make unnecessary and sometimes confusion, but discredit V does not discredit the or reduce the chronology he advocated. I would also point out that he reduced chronology is not dependent on the identification of the Queen of Sheba with the Queen Hatshepsut chronologically it matches, and it would be nice if it is valid, but the curse and the issue is not the identification of Hatshepsut with Queen of Sheba, but whether the third intermediate period dynasties were successive and contemporary with other dynasties. Contradict the revision argument from silence can never be regarded as conclusive. He himself wrote, absence does not prove anything. Clark wrote, the Bible indicates that her principal motive was to test Solomon with hard questions and not to obtain goods through an oracle, her God, as Egyptian text recounts. True, but it is unthinkable that the Queen of Sheba would arrive empty handed. An Oriental custom would require an exchange of costly gifts. Clark says to be revised chronology has been rejected by nearly all mainstream historians and Egyptologists, but it would not be correct to claim no reputable scholar supports the or reduced chronology. All right, let's just get off this shit because I got something to prove.